Alright, and we're live. Welcome back, Northreach, to another episode of the Chopping Block, the only Amtgard show that know how to go with the flow. Yo, God, who wrote this crap? Anyway, as always, I'm your host, Hars, and with me is Ray. Ray, you alive?
Maybe, yes.
And our guest for today is the Kingdom GMR, Richter.
How's everybody doing?
How's it going tonight, Richter?
Quite good, actually. I had a great day at work. And now I'm in a good mood, and I'm home and ready to do this.
Great. Yeah, I had a pretty lazy day myself. I stayed home, I recorded some auditions, I watched some of V3, I watched Parks and Rec. It was a lazy day, and I was okay with that.
I wish. That sounds amazing.
I worked and fought traffic across town. That's always exciting.
Fighting traffic in Alaska generally is. It's like Mad Max. It's like Mad Max, except with moose. It's like a Canadian Mad Max.
It really is like Canadian Mad Max, except probably less polite since Alaskans are like avid gun owners.
I was going to say, it sounds a little less polite and apologetic.
Yeah, just instead of everyone saying sorry, it's...
the ringing sound of gunshots.
Yeah.
Or screeching tires and roadkill.
That too.
And bears. Don't forget the bears.
Oh my.
Moose and guns and bears. Oh my!
So before we get into some of the questions we got, we were talking a bit before recording. Richter, you were saying how you've been sort of like recruited, I guess, as it were, into like Amtgard International as one of our main networker guys, or not networking, but like.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of good stuff has been happening lately with Amtgard International and getting some steps forward in the technology department. And I've been working really closely with Noah, and shout out to Noah, hello, and Payam. They've been extremely helpful in getting things rolling in the right direction. Soon, we're going to be having some really good connection to the org, because it's going to be hosted up here in Alaska, and the Amped Wiki already is. And hopefully you guys haven't had any problems with it, because that's kind of been my brainchild, and Noah's been working really hard on it too.
I wish I could give you an accurate analysis about my experience on AmpWiki, but it has been a hot minute since I've actually been on there, so I'm assuming it's going good, though.
Well, I haven't had any complaints or PMs waking me up in the middle of the night, so knock on wood.
And we haven't gotten any, like, Russian Viagra commercials for it, so...
I mean, that you've seen.
That I've seen, that's true. I have ad blocker on, so that very well could still be then.
How's it been working with Noah? He's been, like, I've met him briefly and I've heard a lot about him. He seems super cool, like, as an Amtgard player.
Dude, Noah is awesome. He has very quickly turned into one of my favorite people in Amtgard. It's always a pleasure to talk to the guy. He's always got good things to say, and he's always positive. Like, the guy is, I don't think he's got a negative bone in him. And a lot of that kind of helps me keep positive, and it's really awesome. Like, I can't shout out Noah enough. The guy's a cool dude.
Yeah, he seemed really cool in my brief interactions with him.
And by the way, congratulations on your triple belt, Noah.
Did he get his third prong night, or?
He got his third night. Yeah, he's triple belted now.
Sweet.
Should we do the hip hip huzzas because of the Ren Fair just coming to a close?
I'll edit.
Hip hip huzzas.
I'll edit in like some more traditional kind of nightly cheering in the background or something.
I'm good with
Hip
that.
hip. Huzzah!
That is good. I'm totally down to huzzah that guy. He's really cool dude.
I've been having to fight the urge to say thank thee to everyone today at work.
It's
I got a few chuckles.
Don't worry, Ray. That's normal. I've had friends that have worked in the various courts that have had the exact same problem.
I greeted two people today with "Hail to thee" on the phone. Guilty as charged.
Super professional.
Oh man, when I was working in the warehouse today, when I was clocking out for the day, my manager was just saying, "Hey Jack, good job today." And I said, "Oh, thank you. I'm out of here."
Yep, that was me today. I just right out of the blue, just kind of like nonchalantly, "Hail to thee." I mean, hi, how are you doing? But you know what that tells you? That was a really successful Ren Fair.
I mean, even if it wasn't successful, Ren Fair, even if it wasn't successful, which it was, I know it was, the Ren Fair was still great.
I loved it. This was one of my favorite Ren Fairs. One, we got our 5-year vendor, and that was a huge surprise when Megan came over and handed that over to us. And getting a little plaque saying that 5+ years in the Ren Fair, that's kind of an accomplishment.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
I was really proud of that. And everybody this year was really upbeat. Everybody was positive. A major shout out to Kay. Miss Fortune. Holy cow, did she kill it out there.
Fortune, and I'm going to give some indulgence to you here, Ray. You and Nikki were just killed it on the sales floor.
Thank you. Yeah, we were talking about that. We started joking back and forth and coming up with things. Like, there was one point where we were yelling, what is it? Fight your sister, fight your brother, fight your father, fight your mother. And I was like, stop rhyming, and I mean it. And she goes, does anybody want a peanut? She was really fun to do sales with. Like, it was awesome.
Nikki is really positive. She's another one of those type of, like, always positive people. Always bubbly and laughing and smiling. You guys are a great team together. And watching you two out there just hamming it up and getting everybody, I mean, I don't even attribute maybe even 3/4 of our people in line was a direct result of that. You guys really brought in people.
Yes, you're welcome. We were actually talking about how, so I used to do that stuff for my church group, my youth group, because I was in leadership in that. And then she used to do it for Girl Scouts because she was, I think, in leadership with Girl Scouts. So between the two of us, we have a lot of like volunteer sales type experience. And then also with my background in marketing, that helps too. So, but it's a ton of fun, and it's a great use of our skills, I think. And she's definitely on for next year too. Like, we had a lot of fun together.
No one can resist a pretty mask.
We're actually discussing making those masks for the group that we're forming for volunteering in Amtgard.
Oh, is it the, what was it?
The Outriders.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Wings of Polaris.
Well, yeah, so I have Dana and Sam and Nikki are all on board for doing this. And in terms of what we discussed, we wanted something that was a little less like biblical in nature, because we were calling it the Angels of Polaris. We decided to do the Outriders of Cynosura, because Cynosura is another name for, I think, the Little Dipper. And so we're going to go with that kind of theme for the North Star and for Alaska. But basically, since all of us are playing assassins and enjoy it, Dana's doing assassin archer, Haley, who is JT's wife, has been doing assassin archer, Nikki's doing assassin and loves it with the throwing weapons, and then Sam loves dual blade assassin. Like, we've been discussing just doing the face masks for all of us, because we all love doing the volunteer stuff too, and we want to be a good support crew. Like, there needs to be people in Amtgard, I think, that are willing to run support crew who aren't in leadership to back leadership up. And so that's kind of what our goal is with that. We'll see. It's a long time coming.
Richter, I'd like to apologize. I think that Ray might have stolen your thunder a little bit here.
I was about to say, sorry. I totally vote to turn this back to Ray, because that was really awesome and interesting to hear. Keep going.
Sorry, totally random, but it was just an off spiral of us working sales together. It was a lot of fun, and we're hoping to continue to do so in the future. So thanks.
I'm sure you guys are going to be great at it. Especially when you consider that I think the next big sales event we're going to have is State Fair, I want to say.
Hopefully for State Fair I'll have more time off. It'll be just before school starts, so.
Yeah, that's right. School's a thing, too.
See, this time we'll actually have swords to sell for the State Fair, instead of just purely Arena last year.
I mean, to be fair, we didn't do bad with Arena, either.
No, the way it was set up, when I put that castle together, I kind of had an epiphany with Hadeland, of all people, who I think she is self-admitted to not really wanting to build things. But she was standing out there and just said, you know what? That would look really cool if that was stacked up twice as tall and you made a little building. And Gorn had came up with the idea originally of making a building instead of using the tent and all that. And between those two and between a little bit of creative thinking, we built a little mini castle out there, and it worked amazing.
That is true. That was a cool building.
So yeah, hats off to Gorn and Hadlin for the idea on that.
Okay, there we go. Alright, well, since we probably should get to some of these questions at some point, I think we can start diving into some of these.
If we must.
Okay, so the people who are listening to this at home won't know this, but we ended up getting a lot of questions from Delhi. Some were legitimate questions, and some were, well, you know, if you watch our show, you know the kind of questions Delhi asks by this point. So, if you want to, Richter, I know you said you wrote down the answers for some of them, but didn't have the questions right in front of you. So, did you want to go over any of those first?
Sure. Yeah, it was a pretty fun one. Delhi wrote one. It was about ancestral armor, anything, whether it be stone skin or ancestral armor, warrior, or whatever. If you are playing with ancestral armor, doesn't even matter how many points, and you take a ice ball to the foot, do you lose a point of armor, or do you take the frozen? Or no, correction. I remember it was stone skin. It was not ancestral armored warrior. It was stone skin specifically, magical armor. And I mean, I was happy to go look it up and all that, and then it dawned on me, it's like, wait, I remembered. Magical armor it mimics the same as worn armor, so a foot is not considered a striking surface. Therefore, that person would not take a point of armor and would be frozen as per garb or weapons or shields. So the answer, Delhi, is that you would be sitting around frozen for 60 seconds.
Well, there we go.
That's the only one I remember.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that I actually saved the questions he had asked before he deleted them, but I am not that professional, so, yeah.
Silly Delhi.
Alright, well, to get into some of the actual questions we have here, this first one we have is from Hunter, who says, Tournament reaving and battle game reaving are very different animals. Would you be down to put together an in-depth video series breaking down what to look for and how to make good calls for each instance?
So that's actually a really awesome question. And when I read that, that kind of made me smile, because I had something very similar already planned out for if I'm elected for GMR coming up this next reign. And that was, yes, actually, I would love to do something like that. I believe our Reeves need to have just an on-hands training, just not because they're bad Reeves, but because we can always improve, myself included, in our Reaving game. Whether that be, calling shots on the battlefield, or being able to make that quick snap decision, or knowing when 20 feet is 20 feet. And in the tournaments, just being able to keep your eyes really close on the fighting, because things happen really fast in tournaments, especially when you get two really good fighters going at it. And if we have videos that are saved, and if we make some videos and we make some like training on that, I think it really would up our Reeve game, and I am all for that. And I actually incorporated that into my my plan of action for next reign coming up if I'm elected.
Sweet. I was gonna say, I know we did get that question, but if you have more to that, then I would suggest holding on to that until we get to this next part. But we'll definitely get back to that in a second here.
Absolutely.
I would actually really love to see the video that you were talking about, because I'd never actually thought about that, but you're right, they're very different animals, reaving in a battle game versus in a tournament. I know the tournament setup that I saw at Clan that was really awesome was they usually had 2 reeves per each battle, because it seems like a lot of times reeves can be limited by the angle they're looking at, and so when you have 2 reeves, you can have at least 1 reeve that sees what happens, just kind of going out to that whole process.
Well, we actually do that. By the way, we have a minimum. We have 2 reeves per ring during all of our tournaments for that very reason. Because if you're standing on a shield side, you can't see nothing. But the other reeve can absolutely see it. What I want to do though is gain with that and grow with that, and make it known so that both reeves absolutely have no question in their head if a shot connected, if a shot didn't connect. And I would prefer to have a very unified and very standardized training that would give everybody equal opportunity to gain that knowledge and gain that experience.
And I think too, just to touch on that, I know if I had access to that, I would definitely feel more confident reaving both battle games and tournaments. And I'm sure there are a lot of other players that if they knew like of a set standard approach, not just I read the rules, but like actual like here are the key things to look for, the key things that we need from you, like that would encourage a lot of players, I think, to participate in reading. So I think that's an excellent idea, and I would look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, that was a really good question. Thanks, Hunter. I actually love that question.
Okay, Ray, you want to take this next one?
I believe the next one was I want to answer Austin's questions.
The one below that was asked by Saban, if you wanted to get to that one.
So the one I'm looking at below that was from Robert Howard. Is that Saban?
Yeah, that is Saban.
Okay, cool. So how do you feel about Disney's destruction of EU? Being a Star Wars super nerd, that must have been a hard pill to swallow.
Moment of silence for that which must have been. But so yes, you're right, Saban. I am a super nerd for Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I've loved Star Wars since I was a little kid. And Disney, bless their heart, tried. But they took something that was very, I guess you could call nerd culture sacred to a lot of people. And just to us, it felt like they threw it away. They threw it into the garbage and they made their own unique storyline, which to their credit, you know, they put their own thoughts and their own ideas into it, probably with people who have never really experienced the nerdiness that we have. And it made it popular for people who didn't know what Star Wars was. But for those of us who loved what Star Wars was and what the expanded universe had become, it was kind of a slap in the face. And there wasn't as much of us as there are, you know, people who have never really experienced Star Wars as a culture. So I can understand why they did it, to aim to the larger mass of people. But for us super nerds and those even just who like reading the books, I feel that Disney really ruined what I experienced growing up and reading books and loving the universe. And I'm not even abashed to hide that, but I at least give their credit where it's due.
So for you, it was the loss of all the written series that they sort of discounted and retconned.
And the games. There was a bunch of video games that they came out with that kind of added to the lore. Revan, my namesake that I'm playing in our theme, the Revanites were all from that non-canon now. And they have a very rich and very amazing storyline. And for it to just go away like that, it kind of stings. But those of us who still have the books still read them, still enjoy them, still love them, and we kind of still call them canon to ourselves, even though it's really not canon anymore to Disney. But I would say if you ever want a book to read, and you ever want just free time to look into it, look into some of the expanded universe stuff. It's actually really good stuff. The story of Mara Jade especially.
Mara Jade, for people who don't know, is the one who becomes Luke's wife, I want to say?
Correct.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, she's a Force-sensitive bounty hunter, and you get to learn a whole lot about that, and the whole drive to the light and dark, and Luke falling to the dark side for a little bit, and coming back and redeeming. It's just a really cool, intriguing story.
And also, just to add on that, it seems a little bit... Okay, so I don't mean this to be super critical, but it seems a little bit lazy when you consider things like Star Trek, how creatively they retconned things without discounting all of the old stuff. Like, you have these whole generations of kids that grew up with the books, and now it seems almost lazy for new creators to just say, oh, well, that doesn't count, as opposed to finding a really creative fiction way of working it all in. Or even Marvel doesn't do that, despite the fact that the Marvel universe, the movies, are different from the comics. They just sort of do it as an alternate timeline. So it's a little disappointing. I guess I could see your view on that, where it's just like, oh, well, that stuff doesn't count anymore, just without any effort put into it.
Yeah. You're right on the nail, and I mean, and you see it too, where they're targeting a generation who really didn't have that growing up. You and a little bit of Hars. I mean, you're a little bit younger than Ray and I, but I mean, I know, Ray, you remember Next Generation growing up. You must have, remember it. Hopefully you do.
Oh yeah, I watched the original series growing up.
Exactly.
On all of like the 3 stations we had. One of them had Star Trek every afternoon.
Yeah, we had 2, 5, and 7, I believe. It was NBC, UPN, and like PBS, and that's all we had. And I watched Star Trek every night at 10 or every Thursday and Saturday at 10 o'clock. And then when Voyager and DS9 and all the other rest of them came out, I got hooked because at the time it was new. But now I look at these new movies and they're kind of tributing them, but they're not, because they have the whole alternate universe thing. And you know, I enjoyed watching the movies. I really enjoyed the Star Trek movies, the new ones even. And I kind of torn, because I really love the roots where it came from, and I kind of like what the new stuff has become. And it kind of tears me, and especially being, you know, super nerdism goes into all aspects of sci-fi, and Star Trek being another one of my big things. So I was kind of critical at first, and I kind of lightened up to it. Now I kind of like it.
You know, nothing really hits you over the head for how low your nerd level is when you compare it with 2 other people that have those like skyrocket compared to yours.
Yeah, we just have time and experience of watching Star Trek back when it was cool.
Yeah, see, growing up, I knew what Star Trek was, but I like either never had the time to actually watch it, or just didn't really have any interest in it at the time. Like years later, I've actually watched the Next Generation. I haven't seen the original or like much of the other, but what I saw from Next Gen, I liked.
What I loved about it, and Ray, hopefully you can back me up on this one, because we need to stick together, the Ultra Nerds. Every episode of Star Trek always had a moral objective and a moral problem to overcome, and it ranged from a plethora of different things. But the fact was, it was never just based around, let's make as much violence as possible. It was always, let's have a moral issue, a moral problem, and let's spend this entire episode with a mixture of an action and drama, comedy, and ultimately overcoming said moral drama. And goes away, and then the credits fade and all that. I loved it. I thought that was amazing, and I think it helped raise a generation of really cool people.
So, I have to admit, my interest in the original Star Trek series was that I had the biggest crush on Spock and Bones. They're like the best 2 characters. But for Next Generation, yes, I see your point.
I mean, even original series had it too. I mean, that was back in the age when segregation was really big, and they had the World War II stuff with that Nazi planet they had and all that, and they really had a lot of cool ways that they dealt with it, and they really acted, because it was acting back then. They lived in that era, and they were still able to really overcome all of this and turn it into something that's a time-honored, amazing tradition now.
Yeah, Star Trek in general did some groundbreaking things on network television, from what I understand, that were just a lot of times unheard of before the episodes that would show what they showed. And what I loved is they always showed the future as it could be in the best possible iteration. Like, it was always a message of hope while dealing with very real social commentary that was relevant to now, even though it was set in the future. It sounds like that's what you're saying too.
Absolutely. And I mean, not to touch too far into off track, but Nichelle Nichols, Uhura, very first African American woman to hold not only a main role on television, but an officer in any type of fleet or academy or military on television. Before, I think A-Team was later on, and there's a couple other things too, but that was a very, very controversial thing, and she killed it. I mean, Nichelle Nichols is an absolute idol of mine.
Definitely. They also pushed for interracial romance, like the idea of crossing those boundaries and recognizing people as people, regardless of, in the case of Star Trek, species, like, you know, completely different alien planets that they're from. But they pushed that sort of social boundary that we forget existed, you know, not too long ago.
No, really not. But I think diving into the weeds of Star Trek is probably not what what makes good listeners.
I mean, Ultra Nerds Unite.
I mean, I was gonna say, don't let me stop you guys. It's your show, Richter.
Well, I'm kind of wanting to answer these questions too, because so far I've had some really good ones.
All right.
I was going to say, Hars, though, you made a comment about how you just didn't really get to watching it. It's very different when, like, you're limited to maybe a handful of things you can watch. Pretty much everybody grows up watching it, whereas nowadays people have such choice in the things they want to be interested in.
Yeah, at my age, the boom of Toonami just started happening, so I was understandably occupied with, Dragon Ball Z or Sailor Moon.
Heck, I didn't know what MTV was until I joined the Army. I had 3 channels my entire life. I grew up in Talkeetna.
Okay, well, I mean, kind of getting to the last of the questions here. We actually didn't get that many for this episode, but still, the fact that we managed to get this far on only 2, we'll see where this one goes. So, this was asked by Drasek on the Ravenstone page, and it's kind of 2 questions. The first one being, what is the origin of your persona?
Alright, well, here's the rest of the episode. So, I guess I'm going to go ahead and give it the full, unashamed version that I actually put together and put some thought and time into. I'm going to do it. So, Richter was originally a character I had played back when I started playing Amtgard in 2004. Way long time ago, back in Fort Hood. I had found this park and people were swinging foam at each other, and I was in the army in Fort Hood, not knowing what that was, and thought it looked cool, so I showed up, and they had me pick a character out and start, basically give them a little synopsis of my character, and I didn't understand it, so I kind of made up the name, and went out there, and they told me about Warrior, and I liked it, so I started playing Warrior and leveled it up. Richter turned out that, through time of figuring out my story, was a German mercenary, like a hired sellsword, to go and guard caravans. And that's his whole thing in life, is a caravan guard. And throughout the travels and throughout guarding caravans and doing the stuff that seemed boring, learned how to actually navigate paths and learn how to make it through the woods and make it through, if the caravan got ambushed, they could get him to safety, and became a scout and started learning the scout side of things, and that's where I got my scout experience from. And later on, as time goes on, I get up here to Northreach and I start playing again and start playing Monk, and I start loving it. So I had to add to my storyline. So my storyline was then that the spice trades expanded and got to the Orient and started doing larger trades overseas, and he fell in love with the culture and picked up with the Japanese style of martial arts and loved it and became a monk. And traveling up here to Northreach, the whole aspect of storm at sea, washed up on shore, hey, welcome to Northreach, and now you're living off the land, welcome to being a druid. So I kind of added all my classes into my background, and I really kind of enjoyed it, and it started turning into a little, what's that word that you use when it's just like a little guilty pleasure. So,
I think that is the word for it.
Yeah, and so he's got a nice little history to it, and if I ever got into RP, it would be kind of fun to actually RP that. But I just kind of enjoy writing, so I just kind of write the story. And that's Richter in a nutshell.
Well, I guess we did sort of touch on this earlier in the episode, but so what all do you intend to do upon if you're reelected for the Kingdom GMR?
So I have a couple different directions that I wanted to try to start working towards, and some of those were actually some of the talks that Goran and I have had, that he's given me some really strong leadership advice that I really respect. And some of that advice was, you might do a great job with the current rule set we have, but part of being in Kingdom is making those groundbreaking things happen and shaking the tree a little bit so that we can make changes happen that need to be made instead of just maintaining what we have. And part of that is the Reeve culture. As a GMR, part of my job is to instill this culture that Reeves are a very important thing in the game. They are literally the referees. And you can't have an NFL game, you can't have an NBA game without referees. And instilling that in people and making it a very important thing where they see that, and there's a culture based on that, where people want to do it. Instead of giving them like incentives and giving them like rewards for doing it, that would be like giving the NBA Reeve or NBA ref a extra little spiff or something. I think that instead of doing that, they're there to take the champion's game, make it a rule, or make the rules and learn the rules, and then enforce those rules during the battle game. And the champion's job is just to do safety out there. And I want to touch back to that. I want to make it so that we get back to that Reeve culture. And that's going to take training. That's going to take shadowing. That's going to take taking somebody who's not quite sure how to Reeve and bringing them with me on the field and helping them get active and get into it and learn what 20 feet and 50 feet really is and make those hard calls that you don't want to make sometimes. And I think it's going to make a very positive effect in Northreach when Reaving becomes a widespread fad that people love to do.
I'm sorry, I was being quiet because I wasn't sure if that was all, if you had more to say or not.
I was afraid to go on the soapbox too much, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty much that, and now I have some new things like with that first question about making the video, and then having GMR meetings, like during those GMR meetings, opening up the rulebook and going to a section and saying, today we're going to go over this section. I want my GMRs to pick a couple questions or pick a couple of things that they're not quite sure on, and we'll discuss it and go over it. And throughout the course of that reign, we'll make it to the end of the book, and I think we'll have stronger Reeves.
I do like that idea.
So, yes, thank you, Goran, for really opening my eyes to that. That was a huge learning thing for me, and I really appreciate and can't thank you enough for that.
I just want to say I really enjoyed that soapbox. I 100% like the direction you want to take things in, and I think that's an excellent sort of vision for what Reaving could be like and Reeve culture.
Oh, thank you. I really hope I can do justice for that, because that's something I really want to see happen, and I'm going to fight for it.
I think, too, there might be something to be said for, in developing that Reeve culture, that also promotes players who are better players because they have the experience also Reaving and seeing the battle from, I guess, two different sides, two different perspectives, not just the person fighting, but also the person observing.
Yeah. I see that. It can build conscientious, conscience. It can build that thought while during battle games. Is what I'm doing safe? Is what I'm doing in the rules? Am I trying to break a rule, or am I trying to look at a gray area? How is this making the game look? Do people enjoy this? And yeah, you're dead on. I think it would be a major positive benefit for both players and Reeves, whether you're Reaving or playing, to have that extra little bit of knowledge of just what it is to Reeve.
Yeah, I think, and also the term conscientious, definitely conscientious players, for sure, as well as having that conscience. So yeah. No, I look forward to it. That would be awesome.
Well, that's one of the biggest points of my my campaign that I'm running for to run for this is I want to see that happen. I want to see Northreach grow to be, out of the 20 kingdoms we have, I want people to look at Northreach and say, those guys have it down. They're organized. They know how to they have good Reeves. They have good tournaments. They record their tournaments. And look at this. They're talking about having meetings about these tournaments, and people are learning from them and basically turning into our own little what did those guys do down in the south? One Grind Nation?
I think that's the one, yeah.
Yeah, where they have like the dojo and the guys are having televised fighter practice. That I really, really like that. That is something I watch as much as I can. I think I can do the same thing with Reaving. We could have fighter practice with mock tournaments, and we can just take two people who want to learn to Reave and have them take each side and just secretly tell one of the tournament fighters to slough a shot and see if the Reeves catch it.
I can dig that. It's like two truths and a lie, just on a physical scale.
Yeah. And by the way, all of these ideas are not original Richter ideas. They're just ideas that were taught and discussed with me, and I've taken the advice people have given me, and I really, really, really want to put it to use. This has been a huge learning experience for me, and I'm super humbled by it, and I love it.
Either way, this has been pretty awesome so far. So normally this is around the point where I actually ask Ray if she has any other, like, just sort of miscellaneous questions that she wants to ask our guests. But we also kind of went through a lot more time than I was expecting us to go through. It's already been almost 38 minutes.
Holy cow.
I mean, I always have questions. There's one standard question I have to ask, though, because I think I've asked everybody if somebody else hasn't asked it first. If you would be all right with that.
Be my guest.
So, what originally got you into Amtgard? What was it that, like, how did you first find out about it, and then what was it that really drew you in, and why?
So, back in 2004, like I was talking earlier, my friend Nathan Green and I were driving down Veterans Memorial Parkway in Fort Hood, Texas, and we saw this park. And there were these people fighting, and they looked like they were having a blast. And come to find out, this was a group called Amtgard. And back then, they used duct tape weapons, swords and duct tape and all that. So they were shiny, you could see them from the road. And we pulled up and walked over and started talking to them. And the immediate acceptance, the immediate friendliness, and just how awesome these people were, just really drove us to sticking around. And next thing we know, we went from playing Airsoft, which we loved, to going and getting invested in PVC and getting invested in Fun Noodle and throwing it all together and making our first initial swords, which weighed a ton, and going out there and just getting our butts kicked for the first year, and loved every second of it. And ever since then, deployments happened and taking breaks, joined up with SCA for a while, and doing just, various different things. I drifted away, and in 2014 decided to make a return. And here I've been ever since. I fell back in love with the culture, fell back in love with the way that things work, and this is Amtgard. This is what I do.
Very cool. Thank you.
It's always a fun question to ask on the show because we never get the same answer twice.
I'm glad I can be unique.
I'm always excited when I hear about people that stumbled across it completely on their own terms and didn't have someone that brought them specifically, like, who's a good friend, just because I think it's neat the variety of ways people stumble upon Amtgard.
One does not simply walk into Amtgard.
Well played. Well played.
I have one further thing I could add if you're cool with it.
By all means.
So, I hope everybody's excited for one thing, for Wolf's Cry coming up, because I am putting together a really tasty treat for everybody. I am in the final processes of brewing together my Richter's beer, and it's going to A, be entered in Crown, and B, it's going to be served and sold to Northreach so we can actually sell it to the population. And I am putting a lot of effort into this. I'm really hoping it turns out well, and I'm hoping everybody's excited for that, especially Hunter, because I remember he liked it.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, just to bring a little bit of, the arts and sciences of Amtgard, our culture is arts and sciences. Now we're going to get to have, something that everybody loves to do at Wolf's Cry, which is, drink and have fun and sing and bardic. Having that a little bit more in-house. And now one of our own Amtgarders made some beer for everybody. Here, have a drink.
Man, that reminds me. We used to actually have somebody else that did that. And that was Korgoth when he made the Doge beer.
Doge beer. Yep, I remember Doge beer. I miss Korgoth.
I do too.
Oh, Korgoth. He's a cool cat.
Here's to you,
my
buddy.
Gosh. When he came up last year for the Assassin's game and he ran around with that mask on under the other name, that was amazing.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that, by the way.
It was his idea to do the sign that I did, the wanted poster for Mara that said wanted for stealing the Queen's underpants.
Correct.
Shh, don't tell anybody, okay?
I promise. My lips are sealed.
Yep, you got that, audience? Keep your lips sealed.
But yes, that was the hardest thing I've ever done, was keeping that secret from everybody that Korgoth was coming up. I have been planning that with him for about 3 months. And then all of a sudden, it became reality, and it's actually a thing, and he's flying up, and it's like, oh my god, it's gonna be a thing.
I was so excited to see him. I miss that guy.
Yeah. Gorgoth, if you're watching this, come back up here anytime, buddy. We miss you.
Yeah, like soon.
Alright, well, I think this is a good winding down point then. I want to thank everybody who's been watching this at home, and Richter, thank you. This has been a fun episode.
Thank you, Hars. I really appreciate it.
Alright.
Also, thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Alright, well, once again, everybody, thank you for watching up to this point. Tune in next episode where we'll be interviewing the Icefire Bay Monarch, Arian. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next episode. I'm Hars, this is Ray, and you've been watching The Chopping Block. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.